Hello, good evening. It's me, Marty McCauley, again with Irish whiskey review, and yeah, we've got Irish whiskey this time. I know some people have said to me before, you don't always do Irish whiskey. Yes, this has been pointed out many times. We are, I am Irish whiskey reviewer. I'm a whiskey reviewer based in Ireland, not an Irish whiskey reviewer. I don't just concentrate on Irish whiskey because I like to spread myself about. I like to go and see and try other things and not just run around. Basically, just limiting the little whiskey world. I want whiskey as a world currency. I want it like uh, I don't know, one of these cryptocurrency things that Justin knows an awful lot more about than I do because I know nothing about them. I haven't a clue. Yeah, so I try not. I try and I want Irish whiskey to be recognised as in all the markets as premier product, but by the same token, I want other countries and other distilleries and other people who do as much work as anybody else to sit alongside us and set a big round table of all the whiskey producing nations. So yes, enough of that. Enough of that. Now, near, far, wherever you are. You'll notice I can't sing. Doesn't stop me, like, but you notice I carry on. So, Titanic Distillers Premium Irish Whiskey. Now, there's a whole backstory to this, and I don't just mean that Kate Winslet got her jollies with Leonardo DiCaprio. No, no, no. Someone pointed out one time, and I thought it was dead funny, that basically the whole Titanic film is some old woman thinking about really a really good time that she had on a boat years ago. That's essentially the whole premise of the film. Um, yeah, and also the guy, the male part of the duo, well, she wouldn't even let him on the door because there's plenty of room for him. So she, so she let him freeze to death and drown. But yeah, it's it's well, Titanic is it the most famous boat in history? Noah's Ark probably is the only one in contention with it. I still remember the day. Honestly, I still remember the day when the wreck of Titanic was found. Little known fact, by the way, the guy who found it, he had found it. He was part of a American Navy uh, sort of top secret mapping program, I think it was, and he discovered it years before. He knew what it was. He just didn't tell anybody, and so he knew roughly where it was. And he went out and oh look, I've happened to find the wreck of Titanic. Aren't I great? So I still remember whenever I was in primary school, them saying that they'd found it. Totally and utterly synonymous with Belfast. These days, Titanic Belfast opened in 2012 was voted the best tourist attraction in the world at one point, in the whole world. Beat the pyramids, Taj Mahal, all of that, beat all of that. Now this there's a whole backstory to, because it is the vision of one man essentially, a man called Peter Lowry, and he wanted to build a distillery in Belfast a few years ago. And Peter won the lottery. This is everybody around here knows all the story about him. So he wanted to build a distillery in Belfast a few years ago, and he lumped into a few problems and troubles, and then it all sort of fell away. And anyway, and then he got a chance of buying the dry dock. Thompson's Graving Dock is what it's called, and it's where Titanic was brought in, rested on blocks, pump all the water out, and then they could work at it. So the physical impression of Titanic's still there. The pump house where they pumped out all the water is still there. And he's bought it. Now this is sourced product, but So is this last one. Because this has been on the go for a little while. This whole thing has been on the go. Like that. Yeah. Wasn't sure if I'd opened that or not. Yeah. So they brought out a 5 and a 10 way back when. I think I've one of those up there. I think I've one about the place I haven't opened. It's a good job I picked up the right one. Yeah, so, but this is another incarnation of it. And I have to say, I do like the label. Again, it works. It definitely works. That black and white label. But it has some numbers on it, which is a bit confusing for people. What's 401? Well, 401 was the ship designation at the Harland Wolff shipbuilders for Titanic. It was the 401st building or ship built in the shipyard. Now, the one thing they talk about, I'm going to put the glasses on here a wee minute because this old age thing's not doing me any justice, honest to God. Anyway, they toiled in the shadow of the great ships, beneath the canopy of cranes, the thickets of cables, and the chains and ropes. The very air was alive with sparks. Then there was the noise, the ceaseless clanging and hammering, the pounding as the steel was shaped and joined, the whir and whine of gears, the shouting, the banter, the crack. And at the end of another day, there was this, a measure of reward. They looked forward to it, they savoured it, now you can too. And it was basically the fact that Belfast was the home of Irish whiskey. I'd say the home of Irish whiskey. It was the exporter of Irish whiskey. They exported huge volumes of whiskey through Belfast. Most of the other distilleries really concentrated on sort of the domestic market, but Belfast was shipping stuff. Now, not all of it was made in Belfast. A lot of it was made in other places and brought to Belfast and exported. But Belfast, there's a dirty little secret that Belfast had all these great industries, the shipbuilding, the rope works. They had the engineering, the Sirocco works, and all of these other stuff. And people talk about it. And then the big one's linen. But whiskey was huge. It was enormous. And it was almost, a sense of shame. We don't talk about whiskey. And it kind of was forgot about almost, well, it seems to be almost overnight that the likes of Mitchells and Kirker and Greer and all these guys in and around McConnell's, Dunvilles, all basically disappeared. Now, this is a sourced product, okay? That it's sourced. It's GND. I'm going to say Great Northern Distillery. Ain't nothing wrong with that because John Teeling knows how you make whiskey. So it's sourced at the minute, but they are building a distillery. So it's 40%. And do me a favour, don't make any comments. Don't put any comments about putting ice in it. If you ever go to Titanic, go to the Titanic Hotel and say to them, "Oh, can I have a whiskey? Stick some ice in it." Yeah, because I never heard that joke before. Along with the other one. How did you find your room? Oh, it was lovely. I just sunk into the pillow. Just sunk. You know, they've never heard these jokes before. Say them anyway because that's kind of funny. It really annoys them. But this is surprising because you need to read the front of the bottle this time. A blend of Irish whiskey, simple, honest, true. This is the spirit of the workers who built the great ship. A story of blood, sweat, and years, like that. And after another hard day's graft, the reward was waiting for them. Rich, full, amber-coloured, and warm, a measure of pride. Now, there is this burgeoning renaissance up here in Northern Ireland, in the north of Ireland, Ulster, whatever you want to term it, doesn't matter, of peat whiskies. We were famous for peat whiskies at one point. It was much more prevalent than any other style. And as soon as you put your nose to that, there's a drop of peat there. Yeah, 40%. Yeah, that works. Now, not an awful lot of peat, but you're getting decent high malt content here. It's oily. It's got that. It, it's got sugary sweetness. It's got treacle. There's little bits of sort of golden syrup there, and I don't mean. The thing is, when sometimes when you're doing these reviews, it's about an impression as opposed to an actual taste. People will say, "Oh, that's like this," but it's hinted at rather than actually being there. And that's actually got kind of golden syrup, just a little bit of golden syrup, because it's got a wonderful oiliness to it, which is something that when it comes in the mouthfeel, to me, always enhances things. Always makes things a little bit better when you've got a nice mouthfeel to it. All the flavours and all the taste is one thing, but when it feels luxurious and a decent mouthfeel, a nice oily mouthfeel, will feel luxurious. That's just goes without saying. You've that lovely, rich, honey, syrupy notes, golden syrup, but it's not sweet. Sorry, it's not overly sweet, is what I'm going to say. Now, lots of people are buying this and straight away to collect. It's still available, you know. You can still pick it up, and at the time of recording, you can still pick it up on the website, and it's a damn sight cheaper than the auction site. So, anyway. It's got a lovely grassy note at the front. It's led by this sort of clover. This sounds sort of pervy, but trust me on this, right? It's kind of rolling in the clover type nose to it. That's kind of what it is. Sort of fresh pea, nearly. I don't mean pea, I mean fresh peas. Um, yeah, um, straw, quite floral. Almost, you think it's grainy. You're going. If you nose this, you think a nose is quite grainy, but there's a nice decent malt note there. That's kind of the impression you know it's a blend, but you're kind of thinking it's probably high malt content blend. Okay, that's what you're thinking. Slight bit of semi-dried wood. So you've got between green and dry wood, you've got that kind of gap where it's still a little bit fresh. So basically, what I'm trying to say is it's got a very fresh sort of floral, uh, flora note. So you could sort of pitch it in between flowers and wood, fresh wood, tree leaves, fresh peas, that kind of thing. You know, that's where it is. But you kind of know there's a little bit of honey note there. There's yeah, you know that it's leading into it. Mm. That's got a real nice depth of flavour to it. It really does. That. Mm. On the palate, it kind of takes what you have in the nose and exacerbates it a bit, adds to it. But once it goes to the finish, the first thing that sort of hits you is that nice smoky note that lingers about. I can still get the smoke. That it's funny because there's not a huge amount of peat in this, but it lingers about. And while everything else is gone, it's kind of staying at the party. Do you know the analogy I would make to it is? Do you know if you were at a party and you spied somebody that you kind of thought wouldn't mind getting to know them a bit better, and everybody else leaves and they're still there, and you think, hmm, it's kind of got that to it. It's kind of got that where it's like, yeah, I know everything else is working there, but I want now we're left alone. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of that, yeah, that works really well. And that oil, it's that oil that gets me. It allows everything to kind of work at its own pace because it's got that nice mouthfeel. It's not sharp. It's not massively high in an ABV that just cleans your palate and you go, oh, and then you start toying about with it. It's not that. It's got richness. It's got a nice development. It's got an intriguing little notes that you want to tease out and see where they take you. And at 40%, this doesn't. Don't put any bloody ice in this. But no, genuinely, you will enjoy this. You'll enjoy this as a drink. It probably if I don't do this, but I'm just thinking myself. Probably again, if you were going to put something in this as a drink, probably just a little bit of lemonade. Um, even just a little bit of fizzy water would probably do that okay. Um, yeah. I know there's probably mixologists out there going, "Don't be so stupid! Don't be so stupid." I don't tend to do all that, but I think you could probably put this in cocktails easy enough. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest. For a blend, it's a really good quality blend, and I'm glad they've done that. I'm glad they've done that because uh, it's for so long. Titanic was in Belfast's history. Titanic was basically seen as a sort of symbol of shame because the fastest, biggest boats. Well, they weren't the fastest, but they were the biggest and certainly the most luxurious boats in the world. And Belfast used to make these. Belfast was a world leader in loads of industries, and then all came crashing down. We get famous for something that we didn't deserve, and just we had essentially 30 years of economic recession. And we had this. I mean, we built something that was the biggest and most luxurious in the world. We used to send stuff all around the world. It was reckoned that half the people in the world had touched something that made in Belfast. Should it be rope or linen or tobacco or tea or whatever? Everybody knew Belfast. And then what they knew it for was basically being a war zone. Just horrendous place, horrendous times. And now, hopefully, we've all come out of that, and we're sort of trying to recapture that. And I'm glad that this can go from the city and go to places around the world, and people can taste it and think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good blend, at a very affordable price. Which these days whiskey prices are starting. Well, I mean, I don't need to tell you. I mean, whiskey prices are just going through the roof. So yeah, the fact that they've made something of good quality, reasonable price that you can't pick up. Mm. Very enjoyable drink. Very enjoyable. I suppose I have to mark this. See, these numbers are beginning to tune my head in because as a blend, I'll definitely put that at 7.5 out of 10. Um, yeah, I'll go with 7.5 out of 10. Good call. No, I'll tell a lie. I'll give it another half mark because the malt content in that's much higher than most. I'll go for an 8 out of 10. That's what we'll go on. We'll settle on 8 out of 10, which is bloody good. Uh, but marking stuff is always a bit random. But I suppose you have to do it. That kind of gives everybody that's watching this a clue as to whether or not I like it. But put it like this: if something makes me smile and I tell it, say it's good, that's probably a better indication than any mark, because a mark's arbitrary. I've had people say, "Oh, you normally score things in and around 7.5, 8.5." Yeah, and everybody else scores them out of 100, and it's like, oh, I'm giving this 94 out of 100 and 91 out of 100. Trust me in this. There's loads of stuff that I've tasted that don't hit 5 out of 10 because they're bloody awful. No, I've done a couple of those. There's a lot more coming because whiskey collections. I've discovered over the years. I've discovered a key point of whiskey collections. You end up keeping all the shit, all the crap ends up staying. They don't end up with this. They end up, the bottles are here after 5 years. There's a reason. They're bloody awful. So, there is a reckoning coming. Don't fear. So, listen, take care and join me and Justin on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. for a live show.